Sutta number 46. Once the Exalted One was staying among the Sakyans at Kapilavatu in Banyan Park. At that time, a number of Sakyan lay followers, that day being the Uposatha, came to visit the Exalted One, and on coming to him, saluted him and sat down at one side. So seated, the Exalted One said this to those Sakyan lay followers: Sakyans, are you keeping the Uposatha with the 8 precepts? I stop here for a moment to make some comments. This Uposatha they translate as the Sabbath, the day when the lay people are supposed to keep the 8 precepts. And this was a tradition in India even before the Buddha's time. That is why the Buddha asked his lay disciples to follow. And this tradition of keeping the Uposatha, it's on the 8th day of the lunar calendar, the 15th, the 23rd, and the 30th or 29th, which means approximately once a week. And from there, you can see other religions like the Christians, they also keep the Sabbath, but for the Christians it's the Sunday. And for the Buddhists, they keep the 8 precepts. The 8 precepts, the first precept is not to kill, the second is not to take what is not given, the third is not to engage in sexual conduct, the fourth is not to lie, the fifth is not to take intoxicants, the sixth is not to eat afternoon, the period between noon and the next morning dawn. The 7th precept is not to adorn the body and also not to watch shows, not to enjoy music, etc. And the 8th precept is not to sleep on high and wide or luxurious beds. These are the 8 precepts. Now to continue with the sutta, so the Sakyans replied, sometimes, sir, we do so, but maybe sometimes we don't. And the Buddha said, well, Sakyans, in those matters, it is no gain to you. It is ill-gotten by you, since in a life thus conjoined to fear of grief, in a life thus conjoined to fear of death, you sometimes do and sometimes maybe do not keep the Uposatha with the 8 precepts. What think you, Sakyans? Suppose a man here, without meeting an unlucky day, were to earn half a kahapana in some business or other. Might not folk well say of him, a clever fellow, full of energy? Stop here for a moment to comment. This kahapana is a measure of money used in the Buddha's days. Then they replied, yes, sir, they might. And the Buddha said, what think you, Sakyans? Suppose a man here, without meeting an unlucky day, were to earn a kahapana, or 2 or more, up to 50 kahapanas in some business or other. Might not folk well say of him, a clever fellow, full of energy? Yes, sir, they might. Now what do you think, Sakyans? Suppose that man, day by day, earning 100 or 1,000 kahapanas, and hoarding up what he got, were to reach 100 years, were to live 100 years, would not he amass great wealth? He would, sir. Well, Sakyans, what think you? Would that man, because of his wealth, on account of his wealth, in consequence of his wealth, would that man, for a single night or a single day, or even half a night or half a day, live in the enjoyment of utter happiness? Surely not, sir. And why not? Because, sir, sensual pleasures are impermanent, hollow, false, of the nature of deception. I stop here for a moment. Here, utter happiness seems to refer to the heavenly happiness or the bliss of jhana, meditative absorption. And in other suttas, the Buddha has said that but maybe here it refers more to sensual pleasures, because here it is said that sensual pleasures are impermanent, hollow, false, of the nature of deception. And in some other suttas, the Buddha has said that sensual pleasures can be likened to a bone without any meat thrown to a hungry dog. When a dog is very hungry and you throw a piece of bone, a big piece of bone, he will bite at the bone, gnaw at the bone, but the hunger cannot be satisfied. So it is the same with sensual pleasures. It just gives us a fleeting happiness, but it is very very impermanent, and so that is why it is said that it is hollow and false, of the nature of deception. Now the Buddha said, "Now Sakyans, suppose here a follower of mine, living serious, ardent and resolved, were to live faring onward as I have advised for 10 years, he would spend 100 years, 100 times 100 years, 100 times 1,000 years, 100 times 100,000 years, enjoying utter happiness, and he would be a once-returner, or a non-returner, or a winner of surety, a stream winner." I stop here for a moment. In the heavens, the lifespan is in terms of millions of years. That's why here the Buddha said, such a long time this person can enjoy. A once-returner is a Sakadagamin, is a person who has attained the second fruit of Aryahood. And a non-returner is an Anagami, the third fruit of Aryahood. And a stream winner is a Sotapanna, the first fruit Arya. Then the Buddha continued, "Let alone 10 years, Sakyans. Suppose here a follower of mine were to live faring onwards as I have advised for 9, 8, 7, 6, or even for a single year. He would live 100 years, up to 100 times 100,000 years, enjoying utter happiness, and he would be a once-returner, or a non-returner, or at any rate a stream winner. Let alone a single year, Sakyans. Suppose here a follower of mine, living serious, ardent and resolved, were to live faring onward as I have advised for 10 months, for 9, 8, up to a single month, even half a month, even 10 days and nights, for 7, 6, 5. Even if he were to live this for a single night and day, he would spend 100 years, 100 times 100 years, 100 times 1,000 years, 100 times 100,000 years, enjoying utter happiness, and he would be a once-returner, or a non-returner, or a winner of surety, a stream winner. In these matters, Sakyans, it is no gain to you, it is ill-gotten by you, since in a life thus conjoined to fear of grief, in a life thus conjoined to fear of death, you sometimes do and sometimes do not keep the uposatha with the 8 precepts." Then they said, "Then sir, from this day forth, we here will observe the uposatha with the 8 precepts." So you see, the Buddha is saying that if you keep the 8 precepts constantly on the uposatha days, that means approximately once a week, then the merit is very great. That will lead you to a rebirth in heaven. And life is very uncertain. We don't know when we are going to pass away. So life is so uncertain. We don't know when we are going to pass away. So we should always be prepared, as the Scout motto says.